The evil god Gratoni falls to the ground, releasing a wave of light across the world, freeing spirits from their enslavement. Amidst the joyous scene, a girl thanks the protagonist for the liberation. Despite the triumphant moment, the protagonist reflects on the arduous journey that led up to this point. Frustrations with bugs and game design hit a boiling point when they faced the game's final boss. Nonetheless, they persevered and finally overcame the game's worst aspects. The game in question, Fairlier Chronicles Online, was a remake of a popular classic RPG and billed as the pinnacle of shitty games. Poorly developed NPCs, generic monsters, and a formulaic plot that relied on the heroine making things worse before fixing them left the protagonist feeling unfulfilled. Only the satisfaction of maxing out the heroine's favor meter, completing all the side quests, and earning the secret 3-minute reward scene made the game palatable. However, once the game was finished, the protagonist vows never to play such a game again. After clearing a crappy game, Hizutome Rakuro felt newfound forgiveness towards people. Even the teacher's usual summer rant couldn't bother him. As a shitty game enthusiast, he visited his favorite game store looking for a change of pace. He found Shanfro, a god's game without flaws, and bought the last copy. The shop owner, Iwamaki Mana, warned him to rest and eat before playing. Rakuro was so absorbed in his purchase that he didn't notice a girl from school. Meanwhile, the girl and her friend discussed Rakuro's gaming habits. In a world where gaming became an e-sport, Rakuro could live his passion without fear of unemployment. Shangri-La Frontier is a popular game set in a futuristic world where players can live however they choose, with high ratings and happy players. The main character is excited to play, taking time to create a customizable avatar before entering the game as a mercenary. Despite some embarrassing outfit choices, the character is determined to succeed in the game, which has a large player base despite language barriers. In a world where gods once walked alongside humans, the great web of life continues to spin. Our protagonist, Sanraku, finds himself in a starting zone, surrounded by the familiar fantasy game setting of dense forests and goblins. Testing out his new avatar, he effortlessly moves and dodges the goblins' attacks. Using his dual-wielding skills, he takes down the goblin with ease and scavenges its drops before pondering hunger mechanics. Despite the endless grind ahead, Sanraku is excited and eager to explore the world ahead of him. It's not uncommon for a hero to begin half-naked, and in this case, it's advantageous for selling items. Now Sanraku ventures forth, seeking new challenges and discoveries. Sanraku arrives at the small town of Firstia, designed to accommodate new players. He notices the high-level players by their equipment and guild insignia. While hunting monsters, Sanraku finds a Vorpal bunny that drops a solid weapon. As he levels up and gains new skills, he struggles with inventory space and the inability to cook raw meat. Fortunately, he overhears a tip from other players about purchasing a flintstone for cooking fires. The protagonist stumbled upon a party of players while attempting to find his way through the game. As he watched, the party's sorceress approached a Vorpal bunny, completely unaware of how dangerous it was. The protagonist leaped into action and defeated the creature with ease, before introducing himself to the stunned party. They mistook him for a pervert at first, but soon realized he was just an unusual player. The protagonist had been grinding in the area for some time, a habit from past games. He also noted the abundance of half-naked players in the game, mostly due to the lack of benefits to not wearing armor. But the protagonist was different, not motivated by the same reasons as others. Sanraku was in a bind. He had too many items and no means to start a fire to get rid of starvation's effect. However, 3 newbies, Lina, Kaho, and Soma, came to his rescue, helping him start a fire using a fireball spell and accepting the portion of meat he had to offer. Sanraku shared his knowledge about the game, revealing that he sells everything but his weapons and headgear, how to deal with Vorpal Bunny, and his level. As they enjoyed the game watching the hunger meter and experiencing the taste of the meat, Sanraku discovered the importance of personal knowledge in virtual reality games. The story ends with Sanraku heading off to Sekindil to explore new worlds and overcome the boundaries of the system with his own knowledge. As the protagonist approached the town of Sekindil, they found themselves confronting the forest of looming danger. The only way to cross the valley and reach the town was to defeat the serpent boss, Orochi. Despite being a beginner boss, its defensive parameters were strong, and its poison attack posed a danger. The protagonists utilized their skilled avatar and tactics to attack Orochi, but found their weapons easily shattered. They resorted to hand-to-hand combat and eventually switched to a pair of sharp knives with high critical hit chances. However, they fell victim to Orochi's hidden poison attack, and their HP began to drop. Despite the challenges, the protagonist remained determined to succeed and defeat the boss, all while avoiding penalties for dying in the game. This battle would be a true test of their strength and abilities. Underestimating the game's challenges, the protagonist struggles to defeat the giant serpent blocking their path. Despite lacking potions and risking damage, they attempt to overcome the monster. Their status revealed the dire situation, only 27 GP left and time running out. They recall the game mechanics and devise a strategy to create a weak spot on the serpent's body. With careful strikes, they deal critical hits and defeat the boss, gaining valuable experience points. In the end, they manage to reach the safety of Sekindil, doubling their HP and stamina bar through leveling up. Bosses like the giant serpent hold great potential for rare items and cooking ingredients, prompting some players to challenge them again. Reiji had spent 3 months teaching a beginner in Shangri-La Frontier, Mia, the basics of the game. They were in search of dog-like monsters when they heard a strange noise and saw a half-naked, mask-wearing player running towards them. Reiji advised Mia not to attack and instead pointed the player towards the inn. The incident reminded Reiji of his own early days in the game. The player, Sanraku, eventually died, but managed to update their spawn point thanks to Reiji's advice. Mia was impressed by Reiji's coolness and thanked him, while Sanraku vowed to repay him. As the penalty for death was only a small debuff for a short while, Mia decided to log out for the day. She knew that eventually, all players would experience the chaos of rushing towards Sekindil while poisoned, just as she and Sanraku had. Sanraku meets up with Modorokatsu, a fellow shitty game enthusiast. They engage in a duel, which attracts a crowd. Modorokatsu uses bugs to execute a tentacle attack, but Sanraku counters it with his Yaijutsu draw attack. The game they are playing is called Berserker Passion Online, and it's known for its bug-filled gameplay and difficult story mode. Despite its flaws, players continue to enjoy playing it even though it's considered a niche game now that most players prefer VR games. Sanraku, the main character, is someone with fast reflexes, which gives him an advantage in VR games. In the first round of the PvP duel, the protagonist ends up in a draw, but loses in the next 2 rounds. After being thrashed by his opponent, the protagonist thanks him for the chance to practice his skills. He admits he never expected the scattered textures to count as hits and laughs at his mistake. However, he also acknowledges the punishment that comes with missing attacks in the game. While watching other players' duels with his friend Modorokatsu, the protagonist shares his reason for switching to the game Shanfro. He admits he grew tired of playing Shit Chronicles Online and needed a change. Although Modorokatsu teases him for wanting to try a decent game, the protagonist insists it's just to improve his gaming senses. The protagonist is surprised by the level of responsiveness and game design in Shanfro. He hopes that the game will change the public's perception of unhealthy games. After chatting and watching a few more matches, the protagonist logs out and switches to the godly game Sekindil. He realizes the importance of buying armor to increase his recovery rate and protect himself from damage. Before exploring the town, the protagonist organizes his inventory. Although some players complain about the game's features, the protagonist finds it enjoyable. He compares it to doing household chores, which may be hard at first, but can become enjoyable if made into a habit. The protagonist and Modorokatsu are online friends who met in a shitty game and often exchanged texts and emails. The armor shop NPC greeted the protagonist with a smile and offered various armors for sale. The protagonist chose the leather armor set, mainly for its price, and because they didn't want to appear like a pervert without clothes. The other armors either had negative effects on their stats or were magical equipment. Equipping the leather armor made them look like a diver suit or a full-body suit, but they decided against wearing the leather mask to avoid looking like a gimp or bank robber. Moving on to the weapon shop, the protagonist attempted to sell their goblin hatchet, but it was rejected due to low quality. They looked for a replacement for their lost mercenary blades, but found no suitable dual-wielding weapon. They then discovered that their mercenary blades were a pair of single weapons, leading them to consider purchasing daggers. The shop also offered the option of crafting a weapon from raw materials provided by the player. The NPCs in Shangri-La Frontier were highly advanced, almost like humans, and the game developers incorporated cutting-edge technology into the game while implementing effective anti-hacking measures. In the marshlands, filled with rare minerals, the protagonist prepares for battle with recovery items and tests out the effectiveness of the goblin hatchet on mud frogs, a resistant enemy. Accompanied by prowling wild dogs, the protagonist maneuvers around the swamp to strike the enemy's weak spot and collects the drop material for armor creation without finding any rare items. Using a heavy pickaxe to mine for ore, the protagonist struggles with their strength stat, but still manages to collect what they need. The journey continues with reminders of Volcano Village's chief and the weight of the protagonist's head. In the swamp, the protagonist mines various materials and discovers a fossil rock with potential value. He heads back to town to craft weapons and inquires about his gathered materials. He decides to buy 2 swamp daggers and also goes to grind levels, encountering a tough, vulture-like monster. Though it takes some time, he eventually defeats the monster and obtains a piece of it containing feathers. The protagonist also learns about stun-locking monsters and the potential danger of high-level monsters with special attacks. With no proper weapon to dispose of monsters, the protagonist decided to sleep in real life rather than level up. But then, a young boy delivered a weapon, and a blacksmith displayed his magic to the protagonist. He even offered to repair and ascend weapons. The protagonist tested his new daggers in the swamp. However, he was soon surrounded by a pack of red hat goblins. The unique monsters had levels higher than the normal ones. After the protagonist's equipment and inventory were at risk of being stolen by third-party people, he thought about escaping, but did not want to. Suddenly, the goblins ran away, leaving behind a predator, night prowler Lucan. The protagonist faced almost certain death. The blacksmiths were mostly known for dealing in weapons, and many players aimed to become one for crafting their own and selling them. It was also an opportunity for player blacksmiths to make money. Sanraku finds himself in a tough spot, surrounded by powerful enemies. Despite encountering a half-dead Red Hat Goblin and a largely intact Red Hat Goblin, things only get worse when a unique monster appears. This night prowler Lucan exudes a malicious aura and is a force to be reckoned with. Sanraku debates whether to run away or take on the challenge. He decides to fight and, armed with his strongest swamp daggers, assumes a battle stance. Just parry is a skill he hopes will keep him alive against this overpowered creature. Unique monsters such as Night Prowler Lucan are rare, raid-class monsters that are almost impossible to defeat alone. Though Sanraku is overmatched, he resolves to give it his best shot. Despite his best efforts, Sanraku was unable to defeat the Night Prowler Lucan, a unique monster that seemed almost unbeatable. Even though he managed to land over 200 blows, 110 of which were critical hits, it was all for naught as the creature's HP gauge remained full. Even the weapons Sanraku used were on the brink of breaking from Lucan's impenetrable mane-like fur. But instead of feeling defeated, Sanraku's gamer spirit was ignited as he pledged to defeat Lucan someday. In a strange turn of events, he was granted the curse mark of Lucan, a powerful reward for his perseverance. While he didn't find any OP skills, at least he gained some experience points and attribute points to distribute. The protagonist finds himself in a cursed situation where he must run half naked, as he cannot equip anything on his torso and legs. Weak monsters now avoid him, but the curse resistance may prove as a buff in the future. Perhaps he is no longer a beginner, but intermediate or advanced. Despite his predicament, he tries to persevere through the game with a tolerant mind, patience, and a calm demeanor. The protagonist contemplates upgrading his HP and vitality to catch up to fleeing monsters. However, his critical hit warrior build with paper-thin defenses may prove to be a hindrance in the long run. The curse of Lucan has marked his body with dark bite marks, leaving him looking like a creep. Nevertheless, the protagonist is determined to defeat the night prowler Lucan. Shangri-La Frontier has 3 types of curses: magic, plot, and curse marks granted by unique monsters. The demerits of these curses outweigh the merits as NPCs hold players with curse marks with contempt. The protagonist, Sanraku, was a high-level player who caught the attention of others while in the beginner's area. He was sought after for his skills and his ability to battle even high-level monsters with ease, despite being a level 1 player. While on the search for Sanraku, the protagonist encountered a trio of newbies who had met him before. They revealed that Sanraku had already moved on to the next area, Secondil. In a hurry to catch up to him, the protagonist left the trio with a magic scroll that they had yet to comprehend the value of. Meanwhile, Sanraku was revealed to have already defeated the giant serpent boss without hesitation, showing his impressive skills and dedication to the game. The protagonist admired Sanraku's abilities and wished to team up with him to take on bosses together. Unable to do much until his death penalty wears off, the protagonist decides to fix his weapons. But the old blacksmith shop is closed, leading him to ponder on the behavior of NPCs. Opting to wait until morning, he spots a strange figure in an alleyway, beckoning him to follow. Intrigued, he accepts a unique side quest titled Invitation to the Bunny Country. These quests are rare, with unclear triggering conditions and unique rewards. Despite being transported to a different area, the protagonist eagerly takes on the challenge, considering it a lucky chain of events. The quest is recommended for level 80 players, with flags for triggering scenarios being specific and often hidden. The quests are not repeatable and not available for everyone. To activate the unique quest, the protagonist had to defeat a high-level enemy using a Vorpal-type weapon and follow the messenger from the Bunny Country. After successfully completing this quest, the protagonist was rewarded with magical enhancements for their Vorpal-type weapons, increasing the chance of landing a critical hit against higher-level opponents. The protagonist found the NPC Rabbit Head to lead them to the Bunny Country, a place populated entirely by Vorpal bunnies, and was greeted by Emul, who informed them of a magic circle to enter the bunny court. In the court, the protagonist met Kashira-sama, the ruler of all Vorpal bunnies. The protagonist became the first human to set foot in the bunny court, and discovered that Vorpal bunnies could appear in almost any area of the game, providing a fresh source of XP points. Sanraku meets Waisash, the ruler of the Bunny Kingdom, where he learns about the Vorpal bunny and their powers. Waisash requests Sanraku to train his soldiers in order to become stronger so they can defeat strong opponents. Sanraku explores the bunny court and comes across various weapons and tools. He stays positive about the quest, eager to gain more information and rewards, while also hoping to increase his favorability with the NPCs. After a long night of playing VR video games, the protagonist wakes up to the morning sun shining through the curtains. Despite the desire to stay logged in forever, the protagonist follows their own iron rule of not playing for too long due to health concerns. Their family is unique, with each member cultivating their own hobbies and careers. The father loves fishing, the mother is a renowned researcher of insects, the little sister is a fashion model, and the protagonist is an avid gamer. They all gather for meals and spend time together, but also pursue their individual interests. The protagonist receives a message from their online friend Modorokatsu, who has recently purchased the same game. Another player, Pencil Warrior, sends a friendly message expressing admiration for the protagonist's gaming skills. The protagonist decides to gather more information about the game before logging in again, and reflects on the importance of maintaining social skills as a gamer. After examining the Rabbit's training ground, the protagonist discovers that there is no unique side quest in the bunny court. However, the existence of the Vorpal bunnies is a secret known only to the protagonist. Further exploration reveals that unique monsters are among the 7 ultimate beings of the game, and so far, players have only found 4 of them. Despite this, the protagonist encounters one of these monsters by chance with high luck. Uniquely powerful monsters are different from normal foes, guaranteed to wipe out new players in a single blow. Fortunately, fighting them always yields experience points. The protagonist realizes they need to continue the main quest, and that the first town is crowded with newbies. After waking up in an inn in Rabbitz, the protagonist suggests returning to Sakandil to repair their equipment, but is interrupted by the NPC Emul, who forces them to equip a Vorpal soul collar that doubles their experience points. The protagonist accepts Emul's offer to join their party and venture to other towns, but realizes they may have missed some warning flags. The protagonist receives a screenshot from a game forum featuring various threads dedicated to Shanfro and other games. One of the threads catches their eye, dedicated to advanced players teaching beginner tips. The thread includes discussions about dual wielding and pet companions, as well as arguments about netiquette and player privacy. As the conversation spirals out of control, the protagonist can't help but wonder about the mysterious figure in the bird mask, and if they could offer any insight on unique monsters and dual wielding. Despite the drama on the forum, the protagonist remains determined to continue their adventures in the game. Emul is a level 56 Vorpal bunny traveler with impressive stats that reflect his role as a magician. Despite the protagonist's envy, Emul accompanies them into the swamp to search for a countermeasure against the curse that has driven away monsters. With their agility advantage, the protagonist charges forward with a carnivorous tactic to land critical strikes on unsuspecting prey. As they progress towards Third Rima, a larger and more promising town, the pair must be cautious of overpopulated exploration zones and chase down monsters that can outrun players. Even with the challenges ahead, the protagonist is driven to defeat the area boss and continue their journey. The armored knight searched frantically for Sanraku, a player with curse marks and a Vorpal bunny companion. She received an email warning her that powerful guilds were also after him, prompting her to redouble her efforts. Meanwhile, Sanraku and Emul prepare to face the Mud Digger, a boss monster that likes to surprise its opponents by charging relentlessly. Despite their lack of information, they were determined to emerge victorious. The situation was difficult, with the Mud Digger occupying the swamp in front of the valley leading to Third Rema. Their mobility was reduced, making it hard to fight the boss. Even with Emul's offense magic, the battle was tough. However, using skills and magic unconventionally was necessary to survive in the game. Despite the challenges, they managed to dish out some damage and avoid attacks. Thinking outside the box was key. The protagonist used voice commands to activate skills in the game to avoid accidentally using the wrong one. Armed with knowledge gained from researching the game online, he climbed the monster Mud Digger, using his low-strength stat and cursed legs. With the help of his partner, they launched a barrage of magical attacks while balancing on the monster's head. They defeated the boss, but it was not over yet. The monster had a special attack, an insta-kill that involved submerging itself in the swamp and obliterating one opponent with a huge mud pillar from below. The protagonist managed to avoid the attack, but it was a close call. Mud Digger was a dangerous monster, and facing it alone was almost certain death. Despite his best efforts, the protagonist was sent hurtling through the air by the boss's attack. His HP was almost depleted, and he knew that falling to his death was a very real possibility. He searched frantically for a way to prevent his impending doom, even considering the abilities of his companion Emul. But in the end, there seemed to be no escape. Just as he braced himself for impact, a sudden warmth enveloped him, and his perspective shifted. Emul had used a consumable magic item, teleporting him to safety. However, the fall damage was not wasted. Unbeknownst to the protagonist, Emul had utilized a high-level spell to redirect the damage to a nearby monster. In a stunning reversal of fortune, the monster was destroyed and the heroes emerged victorious. With Emul's help, they were able to defeat the Mud Digger, a valuable learning experience for the protagonist. He discovered that enemies could possess insta-kill moves, and not all battles were meant to be won solo. However, as the protagonist's HP was low, they could not engage in any more battles. Emul then used a unique item, allowing him to use a magic spell to transform into a human. They were finally able to enter Third Rima without drawing too much attention, though the protagonist wondered if people would gossip about the woman who subjugated a birdman-looking monster. It was a strange dynamic between the two, making it hard to tell who was the sidekick. The protagonist, known as the Shitty Games Hunter, had a new experience when he encountered an NPC while half-naked in the game. The guard at the checkpoint was suspicious, but the protagonist's AI partner came up with an elaborate lie to explain his appearance. Meanwhile, another player named Saiga0 was on her way to meet the protagonist, but was delayed by a queue of NPCs. She observed him chatting with a mysterious woman, only to later realize that she was an NPC. After what felt like an eternity, Saiga0 finally entered the town of Third Rima. Sanraku arrives in Third Rima, a bustling city on top of a hill with a castle. However, being a seasoned gamer, he has experienced many different towns and environments. While searching for an inn with his companion Emul, they notice heavy traffic towards Sekindil, but are unable to inquire due to Sanraku's infamous appearance. Suddenly, they are approached by a female player, Animalia, who seems to know Sanraku's name and reveals Emul's true identity as a Vorpal bunny. As they try to come up with a cover story, they are interrupted by the arrival of Pencil Warrior, a deadly assassin from a previous game. Introducing the shitty game United Rounds, where players repel waves of monsters in a decaying kingdom. Novice players are tasked with a fetch quest that takes at least 12 hours to complete due to the game's abysmal drop rates. Even common items like stones have a 40% drop rate but are useless as weapons and can even break other equipment. The plot is generic, and the PvP element forces unnecessary conflict, resulting in low ratings. Despite this, Pencil Warrior, a strong player, rises to power and creates a resistance group event, earning himself nicknames like the Mastermind and the True Demon Lord. The protagonist, Katsu Tataki, joins the resistance and defeats Pencil Warrior in a 2-on-1 fight. Years later, Pencil Warrior appears before Katsu, now known as Arthur Pencilton, revealing himself as the number 2 in the Ashura Kai. Despite their rivalry, they share a friendship and engage in a fight. The protagonist finds himself in a dire situation, facing off against Pencilton, an experienced player armed with a sword. Despite dodging his attacks for a while, the protagonist realizes that his inferior equipment and skills put him at a severe disadvantage. To make matters worse, Pencilton delivers a message from the top dogs of the Ashura Kai Guild. Reveal everything he knows about a unique quest, or be constantly hunted down and killed. However, the protagonist manages to escape with the help of Emul, who transforms into a Vorpal bunny and jumps on his back, allowing him to run faster. As they flee, they come across a group of PKs, and the protagonist is under attack once more. Saiga0 finds herself in a dangerous situation, surrounded by 4 seasoned PKs. Despite not wanting to kill small players, the PKs follow orders from their top brass. As Saiga0 considers her options, memories of being repeatedly killed by PKs flood her mind. Meanwhile, Arthur Pencilton and Animalia are locked in a fierce battle, with Sanraku trapped by 4 PKs and a Vorpal bunny on his back. Animalia's high-level restraint magic makes her the perfect player to stop Sanraku, but Pencilton knows that Sanraku's vast gaming knowledge makes him a formidable opponent. Pencilton reminisces about the highest level in the game, level 99, and the formidable players who achieved it. He plans to use his former underlings in Ashura Kai to reach his ambitions. Meanwhile, Animalia uses a unique item to cast a dangerous spell. Suddenly, everything changes when she triggers a spell of the highest caliber and Pencilton is hit. The times are about to change in this game. The plan was simple: divide and conquer. Taking down the slow giant with the huge sword first seemed like the best option. But before any action could be taken, the giant was suddenly blown away by an unknown armored player. The giant's allies were shocked and confused, leaving our protagonist to contemplate his next move. As a target for other players seeking strength and unique items, our protagonist had to act fast. With 4 plans in mind, he chose to charge towards the remaining PKs, while the armored knight went after them. A display of agility and acrobatics was made before escaping into the city limits. The rest was silence, save for the excitement felt by Saiga Zero, a fan like PKer who witnessed the event. Others saw potential profit in capturing the defeated PKers and turned to bounty hunters for rewards. A new type of NPC, the bounty hunters, were introduced in towns to hunt down player killers with unmatched skill and equipment. Their presence proved to be a deterrent against PK cases, and some members of the Ashura Kai were brought to justice by them. Despite this success, Saiga Zero was focused on her own goals and completely forgot about the Ashura Kai. In the end, justice was delivered by the bounty hunters, and the Ashura Kai were never heard from again. Sanraku and Emul successfully escaped an ambush and found refuge in the town of Rabbitz. Pencilton and Modorukatsu both reach out to Sanraku, with the former wanting to meet up. Despite being suspicious, Sanraku is also curious and decides to reply to Modorukatsu and send a confusing message to Pencilton. Later, Sanraku explores the Bunny Kingdom and agrees to fight monsters in the Vorpal Colosseum using only Vorpal weaponry. The training session begins with the encounter of several majestic hounds, a group battle-oriented opponent with an average level of 65. Sanraku is determined to learn their patterns and overcome the challenge. During his training session, Sanraku struggles with a severe lack of firepower. He eventually figures out the majestic hound's attack patterns, but lacks the strength and HP to take them down. Sanraku decides to focus on improving his skills and earns some EXP by leveling up and allocating his stats accordingly. With increased DPS, he gains confidence and successfully takes down the hounds by targeting their commander. Although envious of those with higher strength stats, Sanraku is congratulated on his victory before being faced with a new opponent, a parasite tentacle, which he confidently takes on. The protagonist faces off against various formidable opponents in a challenging game. The parasite tentacle, resembling a bear with tentacles, regenerates when cut off and takes multiple attempts to defeat. The goblin berserker and 2-headed tiger are both strong, but ultimately beaten after only a couple of tries. The Dynabor's stamina and explosive attacks prove challenging, but the protagonist eventually emerges the victor in one attempt. The Toxic Eagle, however, proves to be the most difficult opponent yet, taking a staggering 32 attempts to defeat. The Execute Panther is fast and strong, but easily defeated when the protagonist realizes its weakness. The Beta Golem Unit S2 proves to be a fun and challenging fight, with the protagonist eventually emerging victorious after 7 attempts. Exhausted but still capable, the protagonist faces their final opponent, a monstrous creature made out of dried tree bark. The king sets a challenge for the protagonist to survive for 5 minutes, and the battle begins. Loser's Woods was a perilous place, proven by the protagonist's encounter with Night Prowler Lucan. It emitted toxic vapors that led to debilitating statuses and had hair roots that buried underground to surprise its prey. Its terrifying howl was enough to keep the protagonist up at night, affecting his mental health. However, attacking it proved futile, as physical moves had no effect. None of his usual tactics were working, and the monster kept unleashing new, fatal attacks. The protagonist tried to dodge, but exhaustion made keeping up with the monster difficult. Even so, they refused to give up and focused on analyzing the monster's attack patterns. A way to victory started to become apparent. The monster intensified its attacks, but the protagonist noticed common elements from previous stages. He found a safe zone to avoid ranged attacks and used his agility to dodge and taunt the creature. Taking a risk, he grabbed the monstrous wizard's elongated torso and snatched its magical wand, rendering it defenseless. Despite falling and receiving injuries, the protagonist took advantage of the wizard's weakness and defeated it with physical strength. Vaisash praised the protagonist's Vorpal soul and bestowed him with the title of Rabbitz Honorary Citizen. The protagonist's companion, Emil, also joined the party permanently. A new scenario, Epic of the Vorpal Bunnies, was unlocked, and the protagonist had the opportunity to level up once more. Sanraku wakes up with a headache and realizes he needs proper nutrition to perform well in full dive games. He contemplates his lack of quests in Rabbitz and remembers the unique quest Epic of the Vorpal Bunnies with a recommended level of 80 or higher. He searches for information on the game's website, but finds generic world-building and a guild dedicated to collecting lore. Sanraku debates whether to disclose what he knows about the quest, but ultimately decides against it. To hide his appearance from assassins, Emil takes Sanraku to the mausoleum where they meet Pete, Emil's younger brother. Pete offers them an interesting item, a cloak, but no one wants to buy it because of its unappealing appearance. Emil and Sanraku contemplate their next move as they prepare to leave town in the middle of the night. Emil assures Sanraku that the shady person who provided them with an item will be fine, and they discuss the 3 areas ahead of them: the Crimson Trees Cave, the Crater Lake of Calamity, and the ruins from the Age of the Gods. Sanraku thinks logically and decides to avoid the ancient ruins, as it seems inaccessible at this point. The dungeon areas are the true value of the game, but they require navigation and memorization which not all players are capable of. They ultimately decide to head towards the Crimson Trees Cave and avoid the carnivorous plants known as sexy dynamite. Sanraku's disguise has seemingly had an impact on his decision-making. They plotted their course through the city, avoiding the main road for fear of danger. Saiga Zero felt restless and sought a change of mindset, until a chance encounter with a hooded figure sparked a sudden realization. They continued on their diversion, hoping to throw off their pursuers. The group pushed on towards their destination, executing impressive acrobatics to evade detection. With determination and skill, they aimed to complete their quest and emerge victorious. Word of Sanraku's activities quickly spread throughout Third Rima, with players eagerly hunting him down. Though he easily outmaneuvered them with his hood disguise, a skilled player named Saiga Zero was hot on his heels. Saiga Zero sensed that Sanraku was in the vicinity and waited for him outside the city, leading to a showdown. Sanraku knew he couldn't defeat her and was contemplating his options, but to his surprise, Saiga Zero requested to be his friend. Despite being an inexperienced speaker, Sanraku accepted her request. The protagonist of the story reminisces about a game he played before called The Universe Storm, which involved battling aliens and saving the Earth. He is brought back to reality when Saiga Zero sends him a friend request in the game they are currently playing, Shangri-La Frontier. He ponders what Saiga Zero's intentions are and accepts the friend request to try and get to know her better. They have an awkward conversation before she disappears, but he realizes she may have genuine good intentions. The protagonist dashes through a gate and starts to think about all the different games he has played. Meanwhile, Saiga Zero is overjoyed to see the protagonist on her friends list, and rumors start to circulate about a happy armored knight in Third Rima. After encountering a strong player named Saiga Zero, our protagonist has achieved their main goal. However, the conversation left them feeling tired, and they now focus on exploring and fighting monsters for money. In the Crimson Trees cave, they are amazed by the bright and beautiful surroundings, filled with glittering moss, flowers, and tall trees. They come across a monster resembling a sphere with butterfly wings, filled with golden liquid, and decide to target its stomach for item drops. They also discover bee-type monsters that are compatible with honey. Our protagonist tests out the honey butterfly storage bag by throwing it and focuses on collecting rare drops from the monsters. It's business as usual as they continue to slash, poke, and crush their way through. The worker bee shot something into the sky, causing a cloud of golden dust to scatter around. It reminded the protagonist of signal flares from military games. They were soon attacked by a group of warrior bees, known for their aggressive nature. With the help of Emul, they engaged in battle and successfully defeated the bees. Despite their victory, the protagonist was exhausted from the fight. The Empire bee's pollen hair is soft and used in everyday life with no combat application. The Empire bee's warrior hunting stinger is used to repeatedly stab enemies, but is not coated in poison. The Empire bee's warrior jaw is meant to crush hard armors and husks. Insects are impressive for their specialization. They drop useful items. The praying mantis is camouflaged as a flower and eats bees. The protagonist decides to hunt it down, but is surprised by its strength and decides to retreat to avoid revealing their location to other players. The beetles' attacks were unrelenting, leaving the protagonist struggling to maintain their stamina. In a bid to escape, they ran while taunting the creature. The beetles' pursuit only intensified, however, and they realized they had triggered some hidden conditions. As they ran further into the caves, they stumbled upon a beehive and decided to manipulate the beetle into attacking it. Their plan worked, and in the chaos, they managed to loot the area for rare items. It was a risky move, but it paid off in the end.